How's it, guys? I'm VP and today I'm presenting the first in a series of routing guides for Dead Cells. Now, just to start off with, why am I doing this? Basically, I'd like to do a few guides on different paths or routes that players of different experience levels can take in the game. You know, every day there's sort of 2 or 3 comments on Reddit or on the Steam forums about players needing help with which path they should take to certain enemies and why they should take them and what they should do when they get stuck and this and that and the other thing. And you know, you sort of get tired of typing out a small novel every time someone asks, so, or a short novel. So I thought I'd just make the video and sort of slap the link in response to those comments from now on. You know, it seems like yeah, the sort of thing that I wish I knew when I started playing the game, just to expedite the learning process and make things go a lot smoother. The game doesn't do an amazing job of explaining everything as well, and obviously, you know, the knowledge that comes with dozens and dozens of hours of experience is always valuable. So basically this is the first, as I've said, in a series of 4 guides, one for each currently working or viable path for players of different levels, as I've said, but obviously this is all my opinion based off of, again, many hours worth of play and also just research and also it's sort of general consensus in a way, but not entirely. So you know, not everyone's going to have the same sort of ideas, and that's fine, but this has worked for me and I believe it will work for new players, especially this guide in particular. What else? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to try and future-proof every guide that I make, including this one for upcoming updates, but that's hard to do. You know, you never know what's going to happen in the future. Something might change the game completely, but if that does happen, I will sort of update the video or make a better one or a new one. Anyway, this one is for totally new players on their first fresh run, like from starting scratch all the way to the incomplete one boss. Let's hope I get there without dying. I should. And it's only up to the incomplete one boss, because then after that I sort of don't count you as a fresh player anymore. Then you're a beginning player or beginner player, starter player, and probably more likely you're going to die when you get to the incomplete one, probably, if you survive that far. And if you don't die and you kill him, great, man, carry on, and geez, then you probably don't need my help. But anyway, I have made some notes for each of these guides, but it's not scripted at all, so please do forgive my ums and ahs and moments where I have to sit and think about things and explain things 2 or 3 times. What else? Okay, and then finally, due to the random sort of nature of the game, your experience may greatly vary to what you see here, but the base elements of this guide and the game itself stay the same throughout every run, so that should help. And then without further ado, let me get started on a fresh save slot here, slot 2. Nothing really worth looking at in the settings, you know. You can use controller or keyboard and mouse. You know, people have said that the game plays fine either way, despite the developer's insistence on controller. I use a controller, no problem. I've disabled VSync for... I actually don't know why, that hasn't changed anything. Sound doesn't matter, although the soundtrack is amazing. Language diets is an interesting option, but it's for aesthetic value only. It changes the food drops that you get in the game, which restore your HP. It just changes the sprite or the graphic and the type of food that you get. So let's stick with carnivore. Misc is just options that you can skip entirely, if you ask me. This is a nice option to have a look at, actually, now that I think about it. The roll cooldown feedback, which, as it says there, displays a light visual feedback when you can roll again. I can actually take that off. I'm used to it by now, but I'll leave it on for your sake. Put it on and until you get used to the cooldown on the roll mechanic, because it is probably the most important, singularly most important movement mechanic in the game. Okay, what's next? Credits. Alright, fine. Let's go. Save slot 2, new game. Okay. First spawn. It's always pretty cool. Okay, there will be a little tutorial to tell you what to do, jumping and main weapon. I'm going to explain those mechanics in a little bit more detail in just a little bit. And then this guy sort of has a little intro video. Don't worry, you only have to go through this once. So I'm just going to speed right through this. You can take your time through it if you want. Anyway. Okay, blah blah blah. Alright, let's start with the movement mechanics here. Okay, well, first I suppose you should have a look at your weapon. The X button, or whatever it is on your if you're using a keyboard, is for your basic attack. You spam the attack to perform a full combo. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the mechanics, just the basics. The Y button, which would be used for a secondary weapon, we'll get there in a sec, and then your left trigger and right trigger, which would be used to activate the skills that you can pick up in the game. Obviously the A button is for jump. You can double jump in this game by pushing A twice. Some items let you do triple jumps, but that's also beyond the scope of this guide. You can jump onto a ledge by just sort of being near it. As you can see, that you do have a bit of time to maneuver in the air, and obviously I can reach that with a double jump. And then rolling is also another very important mechanic. You can see the little flash of lights on the character when the roll is cooldown. I sort of start spamming it before then. You should be able to hear the button presses anyway. When you roll, you have iframes, invincibility frames basically. So during this, I don't think that there's anything that can damage you unless you sort of roll in spikes. You still don't take damage, but when you end the roll, you will take the damage. So this is the best way, or the like, honestly, you need to get used to rolling all the time. You never stop moving in this game if you want to survive, and you move by rolling mostly. There are exceptions, for example the assault shield, which sort of pushes your character forward, a lot like a roll, but that's one of the very few exceptions. So get used to rolling everywhere, get used to timing your rolls as well when you're fighting enemies and bosses and elites and that sort of thing. It is essential to survival. One last movement mechanic, well, second last movement mechanic that I'd like to talk about is the long dive. That is a long dive. Basically, when you're in the air, push down and then jump. It's a similar mechanic you see in a lot of games. The higher up you are, and the higher up you are, and the further the distances that you dive downwards, the more damage you do when you land. That does damage enemies and it stuns them as well. But a small one like this, definitely won't have the same effect. You can notice the change in the animation itself as well, the landing animation and graphic. So yeah, if you jump into a room of enemies, you should probably start with a nice little long dive before you attack them. There's one more mechanic that I'd like to talk about, but I will only be able to do that when we get to a ladder or a vine or something. Okay. Game presents you with two options when you start off to use as a secondary weapon. Pick up the bow and you use Y, you fire a secondary weapon. You will notice that the bow does use ammunition. It's only got... that's not true. As you can see in the bottom left there, the ammo does deplete. If you hit an enemy, it stays in that enemy until that enemy is killed. Okay, if I just hit that one, okay, he died from just that, which is crazy. Then there's the shield, which you can replace the bow with, but later on you can run around with, I mean, you're not going to stick with the rusty sword forever, you'll pick up other weapons, and you don't have to use, you can use whatever you'd like. You can use a sword, you can use the shield, as you can see there's a little block, as long as you time it right. You can use whatever you want. You can use two shields, or two bows, or two swords, or a sword and a shield, or a shield and a bow, it really doesn't matter. That's up to you. Anyway, that's food, restores 25 HP. So for now, let's just stick with the bow and the sword. You will get drops in the game, such as the food over here. I can't use it now because I'm full HP. Now and then you'll get a drop, certain gems drop, and they're worth an amount of gold, which you always want to pick up. One quick thing to mention about the food: if I lose 5 HP, I won't come and pick up this food. Purely because it restores 25 HP. So I will wait until I've lost at least that much. Otherwise, I waste a good 20 points of potential healing. It's a small little tip. Okay, I need a nice long one. Let's just kill these guys, spam the combo. As you can see, when you do combos on enemies, they will be stunned and they will take damage and other effects depending on the weapon you use on them. Okay, so climbing is the last movement mechanic that I'd like to discuss, and there are two ways to climb things. This is the first way. Also, by the way, you can jump through these ledges and long dive through them as well if you're quick enough. While climbing like this is obviously the basic and most obvious way to do it, I would suggest jump climbing instead, which is basically you jump and then you get a nice little advantage. It's faster, and you know, speed in certain cases will save you from death. You can do a jump, you can even do a double jump to climb onto there. Okay, well, I've now hit the ledge, but you get the idea. Okay, let's talk about door interactions. You can open the door with the right mouse button. Sure, that's kind of obvious, but probably the worst method of opening doors. You can also smack doors open like that with an attack, and that'll break them permanently. Anything behind the door that gets smacked like that in close range does get stunned. You can even roll doors open, and when I roll this, like as in roll into the door to open it or break it open in the same way that hitting it does. And when I roll into this archer, when he comes back, he's going to be stunned for a considerable amount of time. I'm going to kill him before that stun runs out, like this. Boom, stunned. 1, 2, 3, and he's dead. That's a very important mechanic, especially in later levels, to survive and kill enemies quickly. Okay, I'm not going to go into too many details about the enemies themselves. They're pretty self-explanatory for the most part until later levels. For now it's more about focusing on movements and just getting around the map the first time you play. Okay, that's awesome. If you noticed, the piece of the wall just broke open, and the game was telling me something about a secret. Now and then, especially in corners like that, you'll find a little rune. Next time I see one, I'll take my time with it. That when you hit 3 times will open up and give you either one of 3 things, either a gem, food, or sometimes you'll find a rune on the floor which will open a portal to a challenge room, which are very, very difficult, but I wouldn't bother with those for now. This is a blueprint, and you will find them, especially when you're starting out, you'll find them everywhere. They'll drop from enemies, they'll be hidden in little nooks and crannies and secret locations and things, and this is how you will differentiate your weapons from the starting one, and how the roguelite element starts coming into effect. So pick them up. It's worth noting that if you die before you get to the intersection or the hub between floors, between maps, between levels, you will lose all blueprints that you have. So the only way that you can conserve that blueprint for your next playthrough and have the weapon available is by actually getting to a collector in between levels. Hubs are basically the sort of in-between level locations where you can upgrade your things and get the collector to take your blueprints and unlock new things. But yeah, we'll discuss that once I get there. Okay, on your first playthrough, make a point of killing everything. Enemies do drop gold. It's important that you get as much gold as possible. Don't fall from too long a height, because you'll take stun damage like this, and you will be stunned for an amount of time. But if you do actually do a long dive from there, you don't take the stun damage. And as you can see, the stun just stopped that that normal zombie dead in its tracks. Now here's an enemy worth mentioning, the first one that poses a real threat. Turn around please. As you can see, he has a shield. I cannot damage him with ranged attacks from there, and I can't damage him with melee attacks either. It sort of does a mini stun on me. Whoops. Okay, so how do you kill this guy? Roll behind him and hit him before he comes out of it. That's basically, until you have more weapons and skills unlocked, the only way to kill him. You'll see these little green what do you call that, masses lying around in the game world often on your first run, and the right button will let you tickle it. This does nothing, ignore them. This is something that you unlock later in the game, which I'll explain in due course. Okay, let's continue. Oh, by the way, select brings up the map. Get used to the map because you'll be using it a lot. You'll notice these sort of grey podium-like pod things on the map with a green arrow pointing downwards. Those are checkpoints, these things. Not checkpoints, that's wrong. There are no checkpoints, they're teleporters. So you can teleport between ones that you have activated, like this. You'll notice we're over here now. So there's unexplored territory to the right and also to the south. You'll get used to the map and the different colors and items that it presents or represents later. We can't get to that flashbang listed there yet because we don't have that rune unlocked with the little green tickle thing, the vines. We don't have that unlocked yet. Right, so let's just continue our progression, killing everything we find, rolling as much as we can, doing long jumps, getting used to the movements of the game, not jumping poorly like that. Okay, be careful of the attacks and look out for that yellow exclamation mark, which will clearly indicate when an enemy is going to attack. You can dodge it or hit him to stun him. Okay, here's the rune that I was talking about earlier. Be careful of the grenadiers as well, they can throw their grenades through walls. As long as you hit this little rune here, just underneath where I'm firing, 3 times it'll unlock the secret, and we have some more gold. Lovely.